Hi, everybody. Today we have Mel Pharr. And Mel, I just have to say it's a complete honor to speak with you right now. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, and I feel the same.
Can you please tell me where you are right now?
I'm in Fort Collins, Colorado. As we know, 2020 has been an eventful year in many ways for just about
Right.
everyone actually. And so, yeah, it was our dream to get to Fort Collins the last 2 years, and now we live here as of 7 days ago.
Let's go back a little bit for everybody who's listening and just tell me really briefly what you do right now. How do you serve clients right now?
Right now, one of my main focuses is my Ascend Mastermind. And so this is a probably like medium-sized group of women. It's been anywhere between 20 and 25 women most of the time. And these are women who are probably in a pretty mature financially place for a small business owner in their online business. So they're looking to create a multi-six-figure or seven-figure business. My UDU program, I finished it this year for the final time. And so we had about 120 women in that program. And that was really working with either new or seasoned business owners who really wanted to get to the point where they were creating a sustainable income from their business.
Mm-hmm.
So that was more like beginners or people who had been at it for a while, but things hadn't really clicked. So that was my second way. And then one of my ways I'm going to be focusing on even more as I continue to figure out what my next chapter is my courses. So we just turned UDU after 8 runs, 5 years, nearly 500 women into an online course that I am really, really proud of. And we have a sales course, we have a launching course, we have like a just getting started course. So I have like 4 really solid pieces of education that I've wanted to make more accessible to people who just need to know, what should I be focusing on a day-to-day basis to actually make this work. So courses will be something that we continue to focus on more in the future.
What went into that move from New York to Colorado?
Sure. I think when I was 6, I told my parents that I was going to live in New York City. And so I lived there the last decade, and my partner lived there probably 13 years. And I think it was 2 years ago, we were just talking about maybe getting a house upstate New York. And then at one point I said, what if we just sold our place and moved? We said we wouldn't. We thought we were going to be lifers. We said we'd never sell our condo. And my husband was like, I'd be into that, And so over the years, it just was this thing about being outside all the time and living in a place where the culture is all about the outdoors. Because I grew up in Idaho, and my dad had a tree farm like that. I like planted Christmas trees as a kid, as a teenager.
Wow.
And I lived like literally on a mountain for a long time. So I got my dose of the city. And then I don't know, something happens when you get older, or just when you grow as a person. Sometimes you are surprised that your priorities or your preferences change.
Yeah, and I had the complete privilege of attending your Ascent Live event back in 2018. And I remember that shortly after that, you spent a month in Bali. You said, I need to do this for myself, and I'm just gonna go and do it. And now that we're talking about like moving and experiencing different environments, I wanted to ask you, because you have the life of freedom that, every online coach once out there, and you went and you did it. You said, I'm taking a month off and spending it in Bali. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, actually in 2019, I spent almost 3 months in Bali. I went February of 2019. And then when I got back, I said to Rob, I was like, I didn't get enough time there. I need to go back again. And this time I'd like to go completely by myself for 6 weeks. So, and I will say as well, my dream for what feels like forever was to be able to have the freedom to work from anywhere, because before I would say the end of 2015, I didn't have that. And I started being an online entrepreneur. I started working for myself in 2009. So it actually took me like over 5 years to be able to have that freedom. I worked really hard for it because I did not have it before. My first half of my time in New York City was like a big slog. But Bali was I mean, it was just a time where I wanted to go halfway across the planet for some personal reasons to contemplate some of my next chapter life decisions.
Mhm.
And I knew that I wanted to make some choices, not because it's what everyone else did, but because I wanted to put like serious thought into some things.
Yeah.
And my husband has always known I'm super independent. So he was invited to the first trip to Bali for the last 2 weeks. I was there a month. And then the second time he wasn't invited.
Yeah.
And that January, before I left in February, I actually lived here in Fort Collins the whole month, and he got to come the second half. So we were apart about 3 months that year, because he's an amazing human, and because I wanted time to reflect on, okay, like I could feel that. I can't say that anyone could have predicted what this year was going to be like,
Mhm.
but I felt like something was going to change inside of me and then outwardly in the globe.
Yeah.
And I felt like I need to put a lot of thought into who I wanted to be in the next chapter, because Mel, who started this specific online business in 2014, is almost nothing like the woman that I am right now and the things that I care about. And
Yeah.
it's surprising me a lot.
Yeah. And I have to, say something about supportive partners.
Yeah.
I have a husband who's a complete opposite of me. I'm like out there and outgoing and gregarious. And
Yeah.
he's like, you can do whatever you want. Just don't include me in it. Don't show my face. I don't want to have anything to do with it. So he'll celebrate my successes. He's like, yay, from afar. It's like, just do whatever you want. Is
Aw.
your spouse kind of like that?
Somewhat similar. He is an Englishman, so he's like very reserved,
Hmm.
um, very modest, and very patient. And I would say those are three things that I'm the opposite of. So yeah.
Right. Right.
But he is like, I mean, really, really supportive. I would say it's like the perfect example of opposites attract,
Mhm.
but our values are really the same. We just express
Yeah.
them differently. And that's helped me to feel like he makes me a better person.
That's exactly how I describe my relationship with my husband. It's like we have absolutely nothing in common. Like we sit down, like literally we have complete opposite preferences on pretty much anything, but our values are the same, and that kind of
Mm.
keeps us afloat, keeps us making each other laugh, respecting each other's opinions. So somehow it works. Right. So I'm super happy you guys are now in Colorado. How does it feel to be able to like make this move? And it's only been 7 days in there. How are things
Yeah.
here now?
Well, we actually were in Montana the 5 months before that. So we left New York City in June because
Ah,
we were only leaving our apartment one time or two times a week.
mhm.
And it just was challenging. And so we went to Montana where my sister lives, and like kind of hauled up in a little town in Montana where she lives. And then during that time, all of the things we didn't think were going to work out to make this Fort Collins dream came true did. So
Mhm.
I will say that it's very sunny. It's sunny 300 days a year here. My first 7 days, I hiked 2 mountains and went outside, and there's all these natural open spaces to walk in. And so I feel like that's a real privilege after being in a city and, um, during 2020, feeling like we really wanted to have space and be safe. So
Yeah.
it's been freeing, but it's also been a little different because it's not the way we planned on coming here. We're not diving into all kinds of social activities, but
Right.
I know that will come.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, everybody's looking at you saying, wow, that is the life. That is what I want. That is why I join Melissa's programs, right? That's why I do this online thing, because I want that freedom. I want to be able to say, I want to move and live exactly where I want and work from anywhere. So, how does it feel to have reach a point where you have full
Mm,
control over these decisions that you're making?
amazing. If I had to sum it up in a word, but it took a lot of work.
Mhm.
Um, and I also would have to say that I consider myself to be a very highly privileged person. I've
Mhm.
had a good support system. I have healthcare. I have had good education and just resources that I think a lot of privileged white people have.
Mhm.
And so, to be really honest with you, I don't think there's any excuse, really. I mean, as much as it took hard work, um, I've had a lot of opportunities that I don't think every woman or man in this world has.
Fair.
Um, And so it took a long time, but I mean, this was my dream for so long. My first 5 years in New York City were really challenging. And, you know, I was a personal trainer for a while. I didn't get paid if I didn't train those hours, if I didn't get that next client. And I think I survived my first year in New York making about $17,000. And it was really hard. But now that this has happened, I feel so lucky to be able to feel like I can create my own schedule and I can have these freedoms. And I think that's one of the things that's actually really changed me, is that as I gotten out of my version of survival mode, it's really helped me focus more on, okay, what are my priorities? How do my decisions affect other people? How do I help people in a way that isn't just conducive to everybody who does things the way I do, but how do I create programs that help people who do things really differently than I do? And so I think, given the last 4 years in our country and the year of 2020, I've started thinking really differently about what I teach and how I teach it and how I make it accessible. And how my day-to-day actions that I think only affect me affect other people.
I totally want to dive into specifically that. And I'm going to tell you one thing that I have found has been really unique about following you, because just to go back for a second, I have been doing this been in this online coaching world for the past 3 years full time, for the past 5 years as a spectator. And when I ran into you, I sensed a completely different energy than everybody else is putting out there. I started to really understand what it's like to own who you are and present yourself the way that you are. And having coached other people and understanding that when you're starting out, there's a lot of fear of how people are going to perceive you. I mean, you're putting yourself out there is such a vulnerable thing to do, that often we all start out thinking, well, let me be more like her because it seems like what she's doing is working. So let me try that, or let me try this persona, let me try this persona. And I wanted to ask you if there was ever a time, because you are such a confident individual when you put yourself out there. Was there ever a time when you had that insecurity speaking like through your personality online? And tell us what that was like.
I think there are two things. Number one, I really struggled, like many online entrepreneurs do, at least the ones I work with, in terms of being able to put the value that I offered into words and not sound like everybody else. And I remember being in other programs where we were being taught, online marketing skills and trying to emulate what some other women did or said. And it just fell flat. I mean, I struggled for the first 5.5 months when I started this business because nobody liked my posts. Nobody commented on anything. I mean, it was really humbling. And, and so that was a piece of it, which I actually think is a pretty normal piece, but the insecurity part for me actually came, and I mean, I'm 36 now. Like I'm a little calmer, a lot calmer than I used to be. I really feel that the last 10 years has changed me. But I would say that my biggest insecurity is just, I have been told my whole life that I'm too obnoxious, I'm too loud, I'm too much. And I mean, I'm pretty calm trying to be professional right now, but I am a pretty obnoxious person. I have really strong opinions. I love to be silly. And oftentimes I have a lot of, I think pretty funny, inappropriate stories about things I do at parties or with friends or whatever, that I think are good natured and harmless, but so I've always felt like that. And I think my partner, Rob, I remember this one time we went on a date and he introduced me to all of his friends. And I was just kind of being ridiculous. We were in a bowling alley and I was doing like interpretive dance or something. And, I had a partner before who told me that I was embarrassing, and that I've had those comments my whole life. And we got home that night and I remember Rob looked at me before we were married and he's like, I was so proud of you tonight. And I literally I wept a little bit. I was like, oh my God, this man celebrates the part of me that I think are too loud or too much or any of those things. And that first year in 2014/2015, when I was really struggling with the messaging, I think the other struggle was like, I'm not going to seem professional, no one's going to take me seriously if I start, exerting my strong opinions or saying things that people don't like. And I think Rob was the person who encouraged me most to be like, show him that thing you do at home. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. You know, like if anyone has actually followed me from the very beginning, when Periscope came out, I used to do like really out of control dances. I've actually had emails from people who've seen replays that are in programs now of me in 2015, who have just gotten really angry. They're like, you were so inappropriate. You were squeaking and you know, like, you were just squawking and I just can't stand to listen to you and your teaching. So
Wow.
I give refunds sometimes for people because I'm
Right.
like, that's okay. Like, it's
Right.
okay. But I think once I started coming into myself, and back then I was, you know, probably 28 or 29, then I started to realize that, yeah, some people really didn't like that,
Mhm.
but some people loved that.
Mhm.
And there were, I work primarily with women, and there were a lot of women who said that they felt like they were given permission, you know, to do things, which we've heard that a lot. It's nothing profound, but
Right.
I think it does happen to be true that whatever really is true about you will probably resonate with people who are ideal clients for you.
Right. And I can so relate to that. So I've gone through the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be calm and professional right now. Even though like on the inside, I'm kind of flipping out that I'm not so far right
Go
now.
ahead and flip out. I mean, the thing is, I also think, you know, this is one of my strong opinions, but I'm just like, you know, as women, I think we live in a patriarchal society where we easily get painted as aggressive when we're assertive, where we get, you know, painted as bossy or bitchy when we're confident, and when we get painted as unprofessional, or childish when we are, eccentric or any of those things. And I think it's because it's really uncomfortable for some humans to learn how to witness a woman in her full power. And this
Right.
is just the tip of the iceberg. This is like
Right.
me working in online marketing. This isn't like, you know, all other kinds of settings where you see a
Exactly.
woman be unapologetically feminine or female, and whatever that expression looks like, which is different for every woman. We're not
Mhm.
just all one thing.
Mhm.
But you know, there's a lot to come back to. Even for me as a very privileged white woman, it's not like I don't have some of those fears. There's a lot of them I don't have to deal with that I think other women, especially Black women and women of color, have to deal with. But
Mhm.
I think we all have this feeling of like, or I don't know, at least I have that feeling of too much or too loud or
Yeah. Yeah. I the same thing that happened to you with partner calling you that, you know, that was embarrassing. I was told that by
yeah.
a boyfriend of mine. We were in his dorm room, I think, and we were turns out I used to do chorale, so we sang like Baroque
Oh
hallelujah
yeah.
songs and things like that.
Awesome.
And turned out that one of the girls that he was hanging out with also knew the same repertoire. So she and I
So you
started
were
like
singing all the
singing
songs.
like choir Baroque songs, like belting them out. And at the end, I like when everybody left and I'm here alone with my boyfriend, I'm like, oh my God, that was awesome. Your friends are great. His face was just flat. He's like, that was really embarrassing. And I'm like, what is your
Yeah.
problem? Right.
Mhm.
So I totally like, yes, I mean, when we have a fire, we are too much and people are not
Yeah.
people don't hold back in telling us that, right? Like I've been called overzealous for wanting things to be really perfect, for wanting things to be really good. For like, it's I really admire somebody who like comes out and says, "This is just me, and this is who I am." So one thing that I think would be really helpful to everybody who's listening, who's struggling to find their own personality online, is if you could tell us a little bit of what has it been like to deal with the trolls, to deal with those
Hmm.
people telling you, well, that's you're not my cup of tea, but that's a very nice way of, you know, they usually doesn't come out that way. I would love to know how you have overcome all of that people are so afraid that stops them from getting themselves out there.
Sure. I have to be really honest that I don't see myself as somebody who gets hung up on that stuff too much. But I also think I have to be honest and say that I am not immune to those things,
Mm.
but that it's gotten like pretty easy to like deal with. I feel pretty unaffected sometimes. And here's the thing, I was thinking about this. I think there are kind of stages that I'm working to move through. You know, the first one is somebody says something, or somebody doesn't like your program, or and it really scared the heck out of me when I was a beginner entrepreneur. I remember the first time, like, I got a big problem client who like did a chargeback on me. And I like had no money at that point. So for her to like, do a chargeback on a $300 coaching program or something, I mean, that was my groceries for the week. So I just didn't have them.
Yeah.
And I remember being like terrified and really scared. And then over the years, as my business built up, I wasn't as scared of like things going wrong financially because I had more resources. But I also went into the stage where I realized that people's responses to me as a human said a lot more about them than me. And I actually took pride in that for a while because I was in this stage where I wanted to be right and I wanted them to be wrong. And I was like, well, you're just saying that because you're an a-hole, but now I'm starting to move into this new place where I'm kind of like, I'm trying to be more objective about the fact that everyone's conceptions about certain things don't necessarily make them a good or a bad person. It's just that we have all grown up in very different environments. And I mean, especially in the last 4 years, I've really learned that, wow, people can see the same thing that feels like so obvious to me and so just one way, so differently. And I've just, right now, I feel very motivated to put more effort into understanding why people's perspectives are so different, but without like all of the charge around it. So I guess it's kind of that state. The first stage is like, oh my God, I'm so scared. Then it's like, that's about them. That's their problem. And the third stage is like, that's so fascinating. I wonder how they see it that way. Okay, I'll move on. It's like, it's kind of just getting a little more, dare I use the word, disciplined about just your energy and where you're going to put it. At the end of the day, my responses to other people when I get upset says everything about me and doesn't say anything about them. Yeah. And so that has to be true both ways, and the fact is you're just not going to make everybody happy. And my mom just bought me the stack of napkins. It said like, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I'd rather be a tequila shot or something like that. And I was like, that's so true. Like, I just don't give two F's. Like I do. And I do, just like anyone else, worry what people are going to think to a certain extent. But for me, I also, I am kind of a linear thinker. I am a little more like, just kind of like, I'm a pretty strategic person. I'm like a balance of masculine and feminine. And when I get focused in on like a strategy, then those other things kind of fall away, and my other trick to it is I always think about my clients who have like been really served and whose lives have changed. And I'm just like, I don't want to make it about me, like, cause why don't I make it about the people who are being really served in this way? So I think that's one of the things, but I've really developed, like I have my own framework. It's a 5-part framework where I know, and my clients know, what are the 5 things that day in and day out, week in and week out, year in and year out, you focus on literally on a daily basis. It doesn't matter if you're a beginner, if you're a multi-6-figure business owner, if you're a 7-figure business or above, you have to focus on these 5 areas. And that's really grounded me just to be like, I know what I need to do every day and I know how I want to do it. So I don't really care that much anymore. And also it's like, who wants to turn around in a week or a month or a year and think you've wasted your whole life because you give 2 shits, about what other people think. Like, I have no tolerance for that.
Can I just say, throughout this conversation, I have noticed a lot of sprinkles of this theme. So I kind of want to put it back, like put it on the table, which is the 2020 conversations, right? Conversations about division in the country, about racism. And am I getting this vibe right, that this seems to have affected you in a really big way?
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more of what you're going through with all of this?
Sure.
It's okay.
Oh, no, I don't apologize for tears ever. I'm like a 36-year-old white privileged woman. And I think that the last 4 years have woken me up in ways that I didn't realize I needed to be a lot more awake. I think in the US, there's this culture of like individualism, which I've always loved. It's been like a badge of honor that I moved away from my family and lived in New York City my whole life, and you know, did my own thing. And when I first started my business, I didn't need help from anybody, you know, and I was kind of like the just figure it out, pull yourself up by your bootstraps with a lot of the clients in my community. And I think a lot of people really like that. And just, I guess there is just a greater awareness about how so many of all of our actions really do affect other people, and how it's been so easy for me, because I haven't had a lot of obstacles in my life, to assume that my way of growing up in my environment and my resources and my support and my opportunities applied to everyone. And that if other people aren't making it happen, well, then what's wrong with them?
Yeah.
And I don't believe that anymore at all. And so I think it's just becoming a more compassionate person who, you know, really truly believes like, wow, you know, it's very easy as a woman to perpetuate a patriarchal way of doing things. But, you know, I attract 50% of women who are a little more type A, like I am, or like I can be, how I was molded and shaped to be. And then I attract a lot of other people who are extremely visionary, and they do things differently. Like they might have an offer that's a little less tangible than mine is. They might work with energy or other things. And I respect all of those things, but I don't think I knew how to respect different ways of doing things for a really long time. So people who probably worked with me closer to 2015 and into 2017 probably experienced more of like, it's step 1, 2, 3, do it, figure it out. What are your questions? People who work with me now would say, hey, I still have these really comprehensive steps, but I want you to customize it to you. And let's talk about how you think differently. Let's talk about how you work differently. And let's start to respect that you are someone who may think really differently than I do, but how can I customize my program to help bring that out of you, right? Because our world has been created to make it really easy. If you are white and you are a man, you're probably going to have a lot of more opportunities than other people. And I think that I've started to notice there's parts of me sometimes that don't want to work a long day and want to be softer and want to be more compassionate and want to be more interested in how my day-to-day actions and the things that I say have been really, really unaware of how other people live. And I think our industry, and this may make some people upset, but I think our industry, you know, was started by a lot of white guys. There's a lot of white guys out there running all their funnels, doing all their things. And, you know, like I learned from some of those people. But now I'm kind of thinking, it's been almost 6 years of this, and I don't really want to do it that way anymore, because I think there's a whole section of humans who aren't supported to our greatest ability, or their greatest ability, if we just decide this is the way you do an online business and this is the way you market, and no questions asked. And so I just didn't ask questions about this industry or other things for what I would say is far too long. And now I'm just kind of working through not wasting my energy on feeling embarrassed or ashamed of that, because it's not really helping where I want to help now.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's too cryptic, if that makes sense, but
no, it makes total sense. And I just have to say that I thought I was going to come into this conversation to talk about sales and to talk about sales calls and conversations. And,
I love all those things. We could, but
I am so honored that you would share this with the global phenomenon community, that you would share this with our listeners, because I think it's so important for everybody to hear, you know, the level of evolution that happens when, you know, you start out and you're bootstrapping and then you're trying to make it work. And once you get to a certain place where you can think a little bit more clearly and be more inclusive and really think about the world in different ways. So I really appreciate that perspective that you're giving us. So thank you.
Of course. And I would say too, really quickly, that you don't have to wait to make that realization. I mean, I shout out to all the humans I don't know and I do know who naturally started out being that person that I have slowly, and I think a little too late, when I'm hard on myself, have evolved into. Like, I can give you all the excuses that I was focused on surviving and I just grew up a certain way and I didn't really know any better, but it doesn't really do any good. So you don't have to wait. It certainly is easier when you are not in survival mode and when you have resources to have more bandwidth to think more about other people and to think more about how your actions and your words and how you teach affects your clients and other people in the world. Of course it's easier, but it doesn't have to be a reason that you can't think about it now if that's something that is really important to you. And in my opinion, hopefully it is. Because right now in the world, I don't think that it's something to get kudos for. I just think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Why don't you tell me what you think is the biggest misconception that people have of you as a successful woman in business?
That I'm still who I was in 2015.
Mm-hmm. And that thought is just going to make me cry.
I love strategy. I honestly could sit here and talk to you about sales and funnels all day long because I love the way that I've learned to do them now. The way that I learned to do them now is matching up with like the person that I'm becoming now. And so I love teaching sales because I think it's really empowering and I think it's really respectful for all humans, not just a certain group of humans. And so, like I could talk about those things all day and I still love that. I like to think linear and then I love to meander. It's just that there needs to be room to do it all. Yeah. And I think sometimes there's a lot of humans out there who don't feel like they've been given room to share all of their gifts in a way that works for them. And I just, for that long time, was that person who probably wasn't really giving them all the different options that they needed. And so I think that's one of the misconceptions about me now, maybe, is that I'm just strategy. And I'll be honest, I'm not a mindset coach, really. I'm not like an energy worker. Like I'll refer you to someone really good for that. But I also can have really heartfelt conversations that can open up hearts and minds. And it's not all about strategy.
Yeah. So if everybody who's listening to us had to do what you are about to tell them to do, and they have to do it in the next 24 hours, what would that be?
I would just urge people in this industry, like this online marketing industry, to just ask yourself this question. When I serve my clients, am I looking to make this work available to everyone and in a way that works for them? Or have I bought into this idea that there's just one way to get from A to B? Because that's my biggest thing, right? Mm-hmm. There isn't just one way to get from A to B. You have a way to, and you have a system of helping clients get from A to B. Is it customizable enough to really give a great opportunity to anybody who walks through your door who is an ideal client? It's not that you're not allowed to have ideal clients. That's totally fine. But for all those people who are ideal who walk through your door, they're all going to be very different from each other. I think it's just to put some thought into that, because I wish someone had said that to me a while earlier, and maybe I wouldn't have listened. But at some point along my journey, I would have looked back and thought, oh, okay, like now I get what she was saying.
Thank you so much for doing this. How can people find you and follow you?
Sure. I'm actually going to put this link. It's melissapharr.com /get clients webinar -W. So you can probably put that link in the show notes for people, but I did speak about those 5 things to do on a daily basis. And it's ended up being a practical, customizable piece of advice that's really helped people not get caught up in what other people think and feel like they know what to do on a day-to-day basis to get clients online. And I made it into a training so that you can walk away from that training no matter what and feel like you have a to-do list for today and tomorrow and next week and next month and next year.
Love it. Mel, it's been such a pleasure, such an honor to witness this. And I'm so happy that you came and with such vulnerability really showed us how the online industry really has to change.
Amen, sister.
we really all have to be aware of these things. And I'm so glad that we're just a little speck in the universe, and hopefully will impact a lot of people and how they run their businesses. So I'm giving you a really big virtual hug because thank you so much. Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
for
doing this,
thinking
Mel.
of me. I always consider it such an honor to be able to think that anyone would want to listen to my view on things for a while. So thank you so much for inviting me. It's really an honor.
Thank you.